Welcome to the C-Suite Mentor, the place where you will learn the tools, strategies, and mindset to scale your business sustainably and build a lasting legacy. I'm your host, Theresa Cantley. As a fellow CEO, I understand what it takes to scale a business to 7 and multiple 8 figures. It's not necessarily what you might think. It requires a complete shift in how you think, strategize, and execute key actions in your business. My mission is to help CEOs step back into the driver's seat of their business by optimizing their operations, empowering their team, and staying in total alignment with their big vision. So, are you ready to exchange everything that hasn't worked for strategies that will? You're in the right place, so let's go. Hello. I wanted to talk today about this concept of doing everything in your business and how that's a really good thing. Because so often we hear about we need to delegate, we need to build a team, we need to hire people that complement your strengths. But so often we also don't hear about how knowing how to do everything in your business and actually being at one point in time, you were the person that did everything, or even just had an idea of how things were done, how that's actually a good thing. And I know I talk extensively about building a team and surrounding yourself with really good, amazing people. So I too have talked about how, you can't be the person that knows how to do everything, and you shouldn't be the person that has all the answers. So today we're going to flip the script a little, and we're going to talk about why it's actually a good thing. And the reason this came about and why it's actually going to make your business scale faster, and why it's going to make your business healthier and your culture healthier if you are a business owner, a leader that actually has knowledge of how different parts of the business work. You probably have knowledge about how the marketing strategy is built and how certain marketing tools are used. Maybe you even have experience in some of the finance stuff. Maybe you have experience in how the inventory needs to be run and how it needs to be organized. Maybe you even are the person with the systems. All of those things. If you are a business owner and a leader, and you are someone who actually has had exposure to how each one of those things run and work and how everything is interconnected into the business, it's going to make you a more powerful leader. And we're going to talk about why. And I'm also going to give you some things to really think about, 5 different things to think about as we're running through this conversation today, that you can think about as to why it's important, or why it's actually a good thing and it will make your business stronger if indeed you are someone who understands, again, how these different components are connected. And the way that this came about for me is, I was thinking about this, and this happened probably earlier this year, maybe even end of the year last year. I was thinking about, I worked in a corporate job for one corporate job for 15 years. I worked in multiple corporate jobs, but I worked in this one particular corporate job for 15 years. And when I left there and I started into entrepreneurship, I kept thinking about, as I looked back on my experience, I was like, why did I waste so much time there? Because I was miserable. I mean, I had started there. I was freshly divorced. I was 24 years old. I was going through the divorce and kind of at the tail end of it. And I started this job working with laboratory equipment in a laboratory equipment company. And I was there in the beginning. It was great. And then certain things started to happen that, every day I dreaded going into work, and I did not want to do my job, and it was just miserable. Certain things that happened with the owners, and certain things that happened in the culture, and just how the culture was in the business. It wasn't very healthy. And I just remember saying to my husband, I wasted so much time there, until I started to look at it a little differently. Because the truth was, in that business, I was a leader. I ended up working my way up to director of operations. And the truth was, is that I was one of the only, probably the only person that really understood how different parts of the business worked or how they needed to work, how different parts of the business needed to run. Was I an expert in finance? No. Was I an expert in all of the different types of laboratory equipment? No. However, I did understand how the different pieces fit together and why one piece in one area, why purchasing needed to make sure that it connected with sales, or why purchasing needed to connect with marketing, and why marketing needed to connect with finance, and really understanding how everything in this business was interconnected. So when I first started in the business, I came in as customer service and I was handed a catalog and said, okay, this is a new product line for us. It's molecular biology. Here's your catalog. You're going to be doing the phones. Someone's going to come over and train you on how to use the phone, but then we're going to start giving you calls. And I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? I had just come from the insurance world and I failed every single science class I ever took. And I thought to myself, how am I going to speak to researchers who are doing cancer research, who are researchers in infectious disease? How the heck am I going to speak intelligently to these people when I hated every single math class, every single science class I ever took? How am I going to do this? Especially when someone's giving me a catalog and you open up the book and it says electrophoresis. And I'm looking at this plastic box with these combs and I'm like, how the heck does this thing even run? And I was like, okay. So I opened up the book and honestly, I started reading. And I reached out to somebody who was actually, at the time, the inventory for all of this equipment was down in Maryland. And I said, could you give me a crash course in this? And he did. So slowly and surely, I ended up learning this particular product line for electrophoresis, which is how you separate DNA. I started learning all of the ins and outs of it, and I started memorizing. I am one of those people that's really good with remembering numbers. So I started remembering all of the SKUs, and then I started to learn how these SKUs, like how these different parts, how a comb went into the machine, and then it used a certain type of gel that had a magnetic charge to it, and then how. Not to bore you with all of this, but how all of this stuff fit together. So I started to learn all of the components, and then I started to learn, okay, just the basics of what these scientists were doing with it. And from there, I was able to actually start talking to people. So I went from customer service and working with these researchers, and we would talk to researchers from like the Scripps Institute. We would talk to researchers from the Salk Institute that founded the chickenpox virus, and I would talk to people from the National Cancer Center and the NIH, and I mean it was crazy. Memorial Sloan Kettering, and you're talking to all of these scientists who are doing groundbreaking research with the equipment that I knew nothing about a month prior. So, which is kind of wild if you think about it. And I was actually talking intelligently to them. And I remember saying to my dad, Dad, do you remember when I failed chemistry and you were trying to explain it to me? Well, guess what? So, or I failed biology. I mean, in college, I took the baby bio, which is like the super easy bio course for non-science majors. And I think I got a D in it. And the professor was like, I'm going to give you a D. It's a gift. Just like, don't come back. Thank you. So anyway, I worked from customer service and they started to see, hey, this girl really has knowledge of this stuff. So then when we decided to move the inventory up to where I was outside of Philadelphia from Maryland, I needed to learn inventory. And the only inventory I knew was from retail. So I needed to learn inventory to, number one, set up a warehouse that was going to house $3 million of molecular biology equipment for the separation and cloning of DNA, separation and replication of DNA. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to do this. But again, I thought, well, I come from retail. I understand inventory and retail can't be that different. So let's figure it out. came up with a whole inventory system. Then it went into running the division. So then I had to start figuring out, okay, what do budgets look like and forecasts and just the ins and outs of accounting, and we're selling this equipment and how does that need to flow through the system? And again, I thought to myself, well, all right, I know how a checkbook works. So I'm going to figure out how this works because it's simple. Money comes in, money goes out. Sales come in, we have expenses. So it can't be that hard, right? Because like I can manage my own finances, so I should be able to manage this. And slowly but surely, I started to realize that my own limiting belief and self-doubt about previous experiences were holding me back from really diving into and learning how all of these pieces fit together. But as I started to figure things out, as I said to myself, wait, I'm smart. I'm smart. I have good common sense. I can figure this out. And as I started to say, look, I didn't know about, PCR reactions and polymerase chain reactions and what they were and what a touchdown PCR was, but I figured it out and I taught myself. So along the way, I started to teach myself more and more about the ins and outs of this division. And then fast forward a little bit, and they decided to take that division and merge it into the regular laboratory division with all of the capital equipment. So minus 80 freezers and biological safety cabinets and all this crazy stuff. I had to start learning some more stuff. So I got exposed to capital equipment and how the two actually work together. What the researchers are doing with the molecular biology, once they have their samples, then they need to store it. How does all of that connect together? I became the trainer. I became the person that, again, was running the operations of this division that was actually part of the bigger division. And I started to actually be the person that ran customer service. And of course, lo and behold, I was like, yeah, we need to do some marketing on all of this. And this is in the span, by the way, of 2 years. So we need to do some marketing on all of this fun stuff. So guess what? I taught myself, all right, well, we need to get promotion out into the world. So what are these amazing magazines that everybody always gets? So let me take a look at these magazines. And again, lo and behold, I started to teach myself marketing and where we needed to be in front of people and who our ideal customer was and really what made us different, because there were these huge laboratory equipment companies and laboratory supply companies that we were competing against, and they were way bigger than us. But what made us different? Well, what made us different is that we had the ability to personalize. We had the ability to say, hey, we can, even though our price might not be the lowest, we actually have personalized attention. We can actually help you outfit your lab. We can help you do this and that and whatever. And by us being able to personalize with you and give you customized attention, you're able to do your research faster. So again, along the way, I started to figure out how all of these marketing things that we were doing would then connect to the customer that we were actually trying to attract. So in a very short period of time, I learned the marketing piece of it. I learned the sales piece of it and worked on building their first customer relationship management system so that the salespeople could see what their pipeline of sales were, and starting to figure out forecasts, automating forecasts and budgeting, and understanding the equipment and training people on the equipment and training people on the science of it. We used to go to shows and I would be like reading all of the neuroscience papers that these researchers were writing and trying to learn about all this research. This is all coming from someone who failed science and hated science, hated anything that was even related to science or math her whole life. But if I would have believed back then that I couldn't do it because I wasn't smart enough, I couldn't do it because I wasn't good at science, or I wasn't good at math, or I had just gotten fired from my job at an insurance company, therefore I absolutely, I was a loser and I wasn't going to be able to achieve anything. If I would have let all of that, which for a while I did, I let that drive my actions. But if I would continue down that road, I wouldn't have gotten to learn all of these amazing different parts of the business and really learned how business ran and how interconnected businesses are and how finance pulls from marketing, pulls from purchasing, and how they all need to work together in order to make sure that the business runs smooth. And that the people in the business actually give all of that substance, or they give all of those different structures substance. And you need to have the right people in the right roles. So the next thing that I learned was, how do you manage salespeople? How do you manage all different types of personalities? And it was just all of these key pieces and core pieces. And I started to fit them all together and really understood how business ran. But again, I was the only person that really had peeked into all these different areas and in some ways just jumped right through the window and really said, you know what, I can figure this out. I can learn this. And I did. I was one of the only people that did it. Actually, I think I was the only person that really understood how all of those pieces fit together. There were people who were specialists, the controller or the VP of finance, and I was the only person that was in marketing, and I ended up doing marketing for the whole entire business. But the truth is that if I listened to what my thoughts were telling me initially, and if I listened to what people told me that I was capable of or not capable of, I would never have been able to do all of those things. And I would have never have started my business and understood all of the intricacies of how business works. So as I started to move into my business and working with clients, I started to really teach that principle, that as a business owner, and I'm telling you, if you're a business owner or you're a leader, if you are someone who understands how all of these individual pieces work and how they all fit together, it's not a disservice for you to do that. It's a disservice if you stay in that position and don't ever get any help. And if you stay in that position and you don't ever, build a team around you so that you can let some of that go, that's when we start to do a disservice in our business. But if you are someone, and I hope you are, because what I can tell you from my own experience, being that type of person that just became a sponge and wanted to learn as much as I could possibly learn and do as much as I could possibly do and just kind of figure it all out, being that person taught me so much about building businesses and what it really takes to not just build a business, but scale a business. And if I would not have made that decision that, I'm not a loser because I was fired from the insurance company. And I am smart. Just because I failed chemistry because my cousin taught the chemistry class and maybe she wasn't a good teacher at the time, didn't mean that I couldn't learn this stuff now. So I hope that if you're listening to this episode, that you are that type of person that says anything and everything can be figured out. I hope you are that type of person because your business will be stronger for it. Or your leadership will be stronger for it. And here's why. I'm going to give you five things to think about. So the first one is that number one, you set a foundation that you can build on. So if you understand, and when we first start our business, we are the only person that does things. Or before we build our team out, if you're in a company where it's a new division, you are the only person that's doing it at the time. But guess what? You can build a foundation. No matter how analog it is, you can build a foundation. You set that foundation that you can then build on, just like I did. I mean, wasn't the customer service person forever. We actually grew that division. I started off being the only customer service person, and slowly they added one person. And then we started to add more people, but we needed somebody to lead the team who had knowledge. So then it was obvious that I was going to become the leader. So that doesn't stay like that forever. you continue to build on it. And as you build on it, things start to grow. You start to see things differently so that you can build a stronger foundation and you can start building up on that foundation. Second key thing, second big idea that I want you to think about is you can actually help troubleshoot a heck of a lot better when problems start to happen. So as you build your team, as you start to delegate things off your plate, when people run into problems, it's not like you're like, oh, well, I don't know, or oh, go see this person about it. You can actually say, okay, you know what? This didn't work, but that's all right because we're going to figure this out. And you can actually start to troubleshoot things a lot faster, a lot more effective. And again, you can start to see things differently because when we have challenges and we have obstacles, on the other side of that is opportunity and growth. So troubleshooting becomes a lot better and it gives you a lot more ideas. And your team also sees, hey, this person knows, she or he or they know what they're doing. And guess what? Like I like that. That's good. Like that's something to respect, that they worked in the trenches or they did these things before they became the leader. Third big idea is, again, you can build respect with your team. You can have those hard conversations to say, hey, this isn't going right. This process that we have and what we've laid out and how we're running things, this isn't running smoothly. This isn't running the way that it should. So you know what? We need to change some things. Maybe we have the wrong people in the wrong places. Maybe this process needs to be more optimized than it already is. But you know what? I know this isn't going right and this isn't working right and we're losing money here, but this is what we can do better. So you build that respect where you can have the hard conversations. You can stand shoulder to shoulder with your team and say, like, we can fix this. And not only does that show that you respect them, but they respect you. Fourth big idea is, again, you can start to see new perspectives. People can share their perspectives. You can see where there's obstacles. You can see where there's problems, and you can either head them off at the pass, or you can, when they happen, you can start to get some new ideas. You can get some new ways that you can do things. You couldn't do that if you were a person who only functioned in one role, or if you were a business owner that just started filling spots with people and didn't really understand how it all worked first. You wouldn't be able to really be able to see other perspectives, and you wouldn't be able to see new ideas. I worked with somebody who owned a business and had contractors working for them and had a team working for them, but they didn't really understand all of the inner workings of the business. So when things started to erode and fall apart, the team was falling apart, the culture was falling apart, that person could not step in and say, okay, here's what we're going to do to lift this up. Here's what we're going to do to start fixing these cracks, because they didn't know. So what did they do? They started to hire more contractors. They just started to hire people to just start filling spots and couldn't figure out why there wasn't a strong foundation underneath the business. And the business continued to suffer. And it almost got to a point where the business completely collapsed. And that was at the point where I started working with them. And we quickly started to change things and I started to work with them and teach them about all of these inner workings of business and how everything is interconnected. But the funny part was, or the cool part was, is that they remembered conversations that they had with people that may have not have been there. And they could then go back and say, I remember them talking about this. So then we could dig into that part, or I remember this happening, and then we could dig into that. But having that knowledge of how all of these different arms work and the interconnectedness of everything just makes it so much easier to see new ideas, to see different perspectives, and to make sure that you're hiring the right people. And I think the last big idea that I want to share with you is all of this combined is it starts to shift the paradigm. It starts to shift the paradigm of our business. So if you are in a mode of growth, if you're trying to scale your business, shifting the paradigm means that we don't want to do what we've always done and stay in that place. Shifting the paradigm means that we know that in order to get to that next level, whatever that looks like for your business, we need to do things differently. We need to think differently. We need to act differently, and we need to do things differently, which means we need to think, we need to believe that we can do these big things. We need to believe that this big vision that we have, these big ideas, that we can make them happen. And we also need to believe that, again, we are not the only person that needs to do these things. At one time, yes, we were. And we do have knowledge of how everything is interconnected. But now the shift in the way that we think is now it's time to teach other people to do it. Now it's time to lead, not do, not be a doer, but actually be a leader to teach the doers how they can do things. Does that make sense? But it's shifting the paradigm of, because the process has always worked the way that it has worked, doesn't mean in order to get to the next level that that process is going to stay the same. Because in order to scale, our processes need to scale. And we also need to look at our people and make sure that we consistently have the right people in the right places. And we also need to look at our partners and say, who do we need? Do we have the right partners in place? Do we have the right vendors in place, or do we need new vendors? But what this all comes back to is that belief that we can figure anything out. That belief that, you know what? I want to understand how the business works. I want to be in the business of understanding how the business works so that I can make it work better. And our team can make it work better. So again, I believe that knowing how to do everything in your business, and at one point in time, you did all those things, or knowing how each part of the business needs to work is a good thing. It's a really good thing. It becomes bad when we stay in that place, when we don't delegate, when we don't surround ourselves with good people, when we stop believing in our own ability, or we believe that nobody else can do it the same way that we do, so therefore I'm just going to continue to do it. Or we believe that we've always done it this way, so why change? Right? Because if we want to scale and we want to make a difference, and we want to achieve all the things we want to achieve, we can't do things the way that we've always done them. But in order to get to the next level, we need to build that strong foundation that is open to thinking differently, to doing things differently, to acting differently, to showing up differently. So until next week, I hope this episode helped you. I would love to know what the biggest takeaway is that you had during this episode. And, I'd love to hear your story. And I would love to hear your story. So in the comments below, whether you are watching this on video or even leave me a review. If you're listening to this podcast, I would just love to know, what was your biggest takeaway? And yeah, I would love to know your story. So until next week, have a great rest of your week. And I look forward to seeing you soon. Okay, bye for now. Hey there. Thank you so much for listening. If you found value on this show, please follow the podcast so you never, ever miss an episode. And I would love, love, love if you would leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify for me. Even better, share the show with a fellow business owner ready to step fully into their CEO leadership role. Because right now, more than ever, the world really needs next level leaders. And by the way, did you know you can text me all your questions and get real-time feedback? You absolutely can. Just text the word CEO to me at 610-215-2838 to get connected. One last goodie for you before I go. If you're ready to scale your business and have a co-creator working right by your side, my C-Suite Mentor Program may be perfect for you and your
possible new second in command. Just visit thecsuitementor.com to get started.